Hey, welcome to stream, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Got our royalty-free music going. Objective. Let me know if the audio's off. We're really pleased with our deck. 10 wins in a row on Ebon Heart. And then our tech choices are really cool. So, sorry, we figured out what the problem was. It's kind of embarrassing what the problem was. It wasn't that it was disconnected. It was that our push to mic, push to mute, push to unmute had a weird, had to be fixed. You could only do one of them, basically. Okay, so we're going to continue our set review. We went through neutrals of Moons of Elsweyr, and then we went to multicolor, and then we went to Endurance Purple last time. So if you are interested in what that is, you can check it out on YouTube. It's 3 hours long, so my recommendation is either you watch it in very small chunks when you're chilling, eating, or you can basically skip to whatever cards you are interested in, because I do them chronologically. So like I'm going to go from Imbued Bosmer to Razumdar. So if you're basically interested in Razumdar, you could skip straight to the end. So that's how it's going to go. I need to get something from another table. Okay, I'm back. Alright. Imbued Bosmer. 1-drop, 1/1 lethal. When Imbued Bosmer is consumed, give the consuming creature +1/+1 in lethal. Well, we were just playing an Ebon Heart lethal deck. I think 1-drop, 1/1 lethal is great, but I don't like 1-drops in general. So, the best 1-drop in the game, in my opinion, is the Dominion Oathman. The Dominion Oathman is a 1-drop for 2/2 with the ability to burn them in the face for 2 and then to drain for 2. I don't think this card is on that card's level. So Dominion Oathman still seems like a better 1-drop overall. Both from an aggressive and defensive standpoint, because Dominion Oathman is burn damage, but it also can be drain, right? If there's a willpower creature on the board, it drains. It does 2 damage, it drains 2 damage, and then it has drain, which is actually a big deal. As a 1-drop, it's very problematic for people to deal with, and it actually makes Dominion quite good at the aggro versus aggro matchup because they have access to so many drain resources. So the other 1-drop I want to compare Imbued Bosmer to is Brotherhood Assassin, which I think is actually the best 1-drop in the game. Even it's better than the Dominion Oathman. of course, because it comes from Ungolem. Ungolem spawns, summons 3, 3/3, draw a card, lethal. That card is insane value. And the plays that I love to do in my Rage deck, for example, is to use a 1-drop Dark Brotherhood and then use a turn 9 Rage, right? Unstoppable Rage plus a 1-drop. It's very hard to play around. So that might be one of the use cases Imbued Bossmer has, but ultimately Imbued Bossmer is way worse than that card because they both have lethal. That one's a 3/3, and that one draws you a card, so. For that very reason, Ungolem is one of the only 1-drops I would ever run in a green deck. Because it's such a strong card. I'm not sure I'm feeling this music. I need to switch to something else. Let's try this one. This sounds interesting. Looks interesting. Now, that's just 1/1 lethal. When we're looking, that actually makes it the same thing as a Draugr, and no one plays Draugr, not even skeleton decks. And then now it's slightly better to Draugr because it has benefit when it's consumed. Seems interesting if you consumed it with, say, Dromathra Reaper would consume it and become a 4/4 with lethal, Ruined Shamblers could benefit from consuming it off the top of your deck. I feel like though there's another one that has Ward though, and is this one really better than the one with Guard? And is this ultimately better than a... Is it actually better than 1-drop or... I want to be an assassin like Naryu. The 2/1 Morag Tong Aspirant. I don't think so. Mogtron Aspirant is a card that is actually quite dangerous. The other green 1-drop is Deepwood Trapper, 1/3 if you want to be defensive. So I think when we look at a card like this, we should ask, what is the use case? Are we trying to be defensive or are we trying to be offensive? If you want to be aggressive, isn't Morag Tong Aspirant a better pickup? It has double the attack, has the ability to respawn itself, and is actually a serious threat. Deepwood Trapper, 1/3 guard, is that not a better defensive option? But it's interesting because it's a defensive option that almost never gets seen play in defensive decks. They use it almost exclusively in aggressive decks to defend your threats. Deepwood Trapper plus the Morag Tong Aspirant is quite a good combo. It can control the lane, lock down a lane with just 2 1-drops. Because you can just attach items to them, you can use Cloud Rest Illusionist. Halalu likes those kind of tricks. So I think Imbued Bossmer has a lot of competition. Now, when it's consumed, I'm a little concerned because most of these consuming creatures are so strong. Like, they become so big. They get 3 attack, 4 attack, 5 attack, up to 8 attack, right? Shambler, we talked about yesterday about how Shambler plus Seeker of the Black Arts is a 7/7. And it could go up from there. If you did a trade, it's an 8/8. So if he became an 8/8 with lethal, is lethal a relevant keyword, right? Back to our Dromathra Reaper, a 4/4 with lethal, is that relevant? I mean, usually you want lethal on creatures that have very low attack. A 4/4, and lethal is not meant for going for face. Lethal is in general a more defensive keyword because it's reduced attack, but you're causing a threat to creatures, not to your opponent, which makes me think it's more of a defensive card. But when we've looked at the consume cards so far, the package is very aggressive. Let's take Nibonese Mercenary, for example. He consumes your 1/1 lethal, he becomes a 4/6 with lethal. It's like, sure, you could take out Hive Defenders. Okay. So in those cases, it might be relevant, but I find this card to be quite underwhelming. From a defensive point of view, Old Velothi Assassin, which is just 2 more Magicka, is something that I'm running 3 of, and I think Old Velothi Assassin is just amazing. I mean, lethal, rally, 1/2. This card's scary. And the Imbued Bossmer being a 1/1. Problem is when you play this on curve, like let's say you go first, you play this on curve. Sure, you control lane. The opponent's going to dodge that lane. Now with Old Velothi Assassin, sure, it costs twice as much. But it has the potential to trade in twice, because 1 toughness means you're trading in only once. You're definitely dead. Unless you're trading into a 0 attack creature. But there are 1 toughness creatures such as Merchant's Camels, these guild recruits, and Old Velothi Assassins 2 toughness will guarantee maybe 2 trades, at least 1 trade. And then the rally makes it an engine, which is very scary. And they have to answer it, as opposed to Imbued Bossmer, it could be ignored pretty much. So it's not aggressive enough, and I think the Consume archetype is more aggressive, it's better suited with aggression, with the Shamblers. And I think it's not defensive enough, because you have other interesting options. Card art's really cool though. Slinking Jackal, 2-drop 4/2. It turns out that so many people are fans. So many people are fans of the Wily Kiva. So Willpower has the 2/4 2-drop, 2/4, and they're not fans of the Slinking Jackal so much. But the Slinking Jackal and the Wily Kiva are just like flipped. Well, do you want more aggression or do you want more toughness? I think that Slinking Jackal has a place in very aggressive decks. It has no place in a defensive deck. Or maybe it does. Maybe it actually does. Maybe, like, what if I put this in a scout deck? Maybe it could be what the doctor ordered, but I doubt it. But the Slinking Jackal has great stats. It's more or less 3/3 stats for 2, which is above average. Dromathral Reaper gets you that stat line. So Dromathral Reaper, when it consumes, is 3/3, basically. Slinking Jackal, 4/2. Very aggressive. Not meant for trading. Quite good for decks that are involved using movement. So like, you put this in a lane, you attack. You put it in field lane, you attack. The opponent puts a card in front of it. Then the next turn you use some kind of movement ability, like Shadow Shift, and go to the next lane. You can add up a lot of damage. I've certainly been taken out by Slinking Jackal on my scout deck quite a few times. So have to respect this card. It's very dangerous. It's definitely a card that Mournhold Trader are friends with. Like, Mournhold Trader is that 4/4. Slinking Jackal's the same thing, less defense, but no downside. So in many situations, Slinking Jackal's actually better because Mournhold Trader, let's say Mournhold Trader is facing a lethal deck, like a deck that has lethal cards, like Fighter's Guild Recruit. They're basically the same, except for Slinking Jackal, when he dies, doesn't generate your opponent a guard. So definitely, I think Mournhold Trader decks should be looking into stacking up on some of these, perhaps. Soothsay Bootlegger. Now this guy is hip. Like, this armor belt is not going to protect him very much, but he don't care. He's got a nice little armor circle here, a pauldron, or pauldrons are for shoulders, I think. Let's search that up. Pauldron. A pauldron is a component of plate armor which evolved has to cover the shoulder area. Yeah, it's a shoulder. And sometimes parts of the chest. So there are pauldrons that you could put on your... Wait. It's what those gladiators wear. It's not a pauldron. Um, 1/5, 2-drop, guard. Another friendly creature ignores guards. Its turn. I mean, his stat line is basically... Yeah, man, this card's annoying. Like, he's 1/5. He's pretty big. He's guard. There's another card in the game that's a 1/5 that's 2-drop and it has no keywords, if I'm not mistaken. Might have guard. I mean, might. Let's check. There's definitely a 2-drop in the game that has... I think it's green, too. Oh no, it's yellow. It's this card. Kathai Rat Veteran. So this was what... Not playable, not played at all. So they just printed a better version of him. He's straight up better. He has 2 abilities. The guard, it could be relevant because I think this deck must be run into a more aggressive deck. Another friendly creature ignores guards this turn, but maybe it could be played in defensive decks and kind of avoids using the whole another friendly creature ignores guards this turn and kind of just use it as a big guard at 2-drop. Maybe Scout could benefit from this because we do get rolled by like Spell Sword and stuff like this. So maybe it could be played. I mean, it is kind of fat. It's kind of big guard. I mean, against a 1/1 token deck, maybe it has a place. Well, in a monk deck that's more aggressive, it kind of functions as a Deepwood Trapper. It's a guard to protect more aggressive units like Mournholder Traders or other Pilfer units. Pilfer cards that like those guys that get 2/2s that become +1/+1 per Pilfer, or even the 3/0s that get +3/0 when they get buffed up. Those are all options. Hello. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Like where Monk does have an interesting use case for this because Monk has very large burst damage, and if they need to get past 1 guard, Suthe Bootlegger might be able to get that last bit of damage in. We were playing a bit of Monk earlier in this season and did surprisingly a lot of damage in very short turns. So I think this is a good card, but I think it's a tech card. It's a good card, but you can't really put 3 of them in an aggressive deck because if you put 3 of them, then you're not doing enough damage. So this card and this card might be friends, for example. Because this is a small guy, this is a big guy. You could block him. But playing maybe 1 copy as a tech card could also be a huge surprise factor. I think this card might be better as a 1-of than a 2-of. Especially in a 50-card deck, because if you see 2 of them and you're trying to beat down your opponent, it's kind of weird. But you could use this as the surprise factor finisher, as I believe, was it Crystal Angel said? Crystal Angel said. 2-drop, Tenar Zalvit, Night Stalker. 3/4, at the start of your turn, consume a random creature. If you can't sacrifice Tenar Zalvit, Night Stalker. I think this card needs, at least as far as I can tell, well, we've only gone through purple, this card needs to be played with Seeker of the Black Arts or Ruin Shambler. It needs cards that just start dumping cards in the grave. And aggressive cards at it. Aggressively dumping cards. So it's more of an aggressive deck card. It's smaller than a Mournhold Trader, and it has a conditional where he will basically die if there's no more cards to consume, which isn't a problem if he only lives for 2 turns. Likely, as a 2-drop, he will only live for like 2 turns. So it's not like you need him to stick around forever. But you definitely need enablers like these cards to set him up properly, which makes it interesting because he's not playable on curve. You can't play him on turn 1 with the ring because he'd immediately die because there's no cards in the grave. You can't play him without setup properly, so he's more of a card that you round your curve up with, and you place him Like, he's a cheap card that is to be paired with other cheap cards on like turn 4. Once you've set things up, or turn 3, maybe as early as turn 3 if you've got the Seeker of Black Arts, already got that engine going. And he does have an interesting, weird interesting use. I don't think it's easy to play this kind of card, because if let's say you dump Imbued Argonian, then he becomes a 4/5 with guard. If he eats the Imbued Bosmer, he becomes a 4/5 with lethal, but it's kind of random. It's kind of RNG based because it's a random creature. If it was consume a creature of your choice, this card would be way better than it is, because consume a random creature can end up being the wrong creature, right? So I do think it would be cooler if this was consume a creature and make it a little bit more skill based, a little bit more planning and less RNG, because consuming the right creature at the right time can be meaningful, right? And that's actually one of the problems with the consume archetype, as far as I can tell, with cards such as the Shambler and the Ill-Fated Scholar. I want to change the music to something a little bit more different. These cards really benefit from good luck. You have Ill-Fated Scholar at the top of your deck. You Shambler, like as I said yesterday, if you use Ruined Shambler with 3 Ill-Fated Scholars in front of the deck, you probably just won the game because you just generated 3 3/2s. And this thing just became at least a 4/4. Right? As a turn 4 play, 3 3/2s and 4/4 at least. But that's kind of luck based, right? And then this is also like consuming a card that has the buff like this, kind of luck based. But you could kind of control that a little bit potentially by sort of suiciding creatures, I guess, in the right order. So you make sure your grave has less cards, so that the chances of eating the right one is correct. But it's still a little scary. Personally, I wouldn't want to play a card like this. I would rather take the Slinking Jackal that you can play on curve, and it's still good to round up the curve. So like, even if this card has some kind of interesting upside, but it's very hard to trigger and hard to control, and actually a very bad side where he accidentally he kills himself if you can't actually get this going, then Slinking Jackal is hands down better. And plus, this card's not a card you can play in a defensive deck anyway, since the archetype's very aggressive. So isn't more attack what you're looking for? Alright, let's go to the... I have no idea if... Mr. Suicide Sheep? I have no idea if Suicide Sheep is royalty free. He's good. He's a good... let's check it. Oh. Oh wow, there's so many. It's good, but it's not royalty free. Sorry guys, we gotta get some royalty free music. Alright, Chill Step. Chill Step's good stuff.
Trusting your spirit, yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I think in an aggressive deck, Slinky Jackal's just hands down better, because he won't betray you. Moonphase Suthe. Khajiit, 2/2, 3-drop, wax, +1 and drain, Wayne, draw a card. I'm running 3 of these in my scout deck, and I like this card in a scout deck that runs Ordurnian Necromancers, because having that 2/2 stat line makes him a Necromancer target, basically. Flexibility of becoming a drain creature or a Wayne draw card is good in a scout deck, because sometimes you just want to draw, but sometimes you are under a lot of pressure and you need to fight back, and you just need to get drain creatures on the board. And not only do you want to have Barrow Stalkers and giant bats, but you want to have an additional sort of drain resource. And Brynjolf is a little slow and very, very clunky when they silence him. Like, when you put Brynjolf in the shadow lane and they're in control of the field lane and they silence Brynjolf, you lose. So, Moonface Suthe is a less of a problem. So, like, if they silence him, like, with Moonface Suthe, because he's not so expensive as being a 3-drop, we could play him waxed on turn 3 in front of an aggressive lineup and force them to trade at least and take damage off our face. That's good on Scout. Or on Wayne's even turns, on turns 2 or 4, things have chilled down a little bit, we can draw. And when we use Necromancer, Wax and Wayne still apply, so if it's a even turn, we can Ordurnian Necromancer and draw. And if it's a Wax turn, we can get Drain. And we can just plan this in the future. If we're feeling like, hey, we've already controlled the board, opponent's running out of cards, but we're very low in life, maybe we're in Lightning Bolt range, let's Ordurnian Necromancer or Moonface Suthe because we don't have any giant bats in the grave, and let's just stabilize. Conversely, when you're in the control matchup and they're like Guildtorn Dragon, like our most recent opponent was, maybe you just want to draw. So you just draw, and then you Ordurnian Necromancer, draw even more. I think for 3 Magicka, 2/2 to draw is better than your... it's definitely better than the 2/1 Induro Mastermind, and it's a 3-drop, 3/3 drain. You're just as good as a Golden Initiate. So it's fair enough. So even though the card's flexible, you're paying market rate, basically. I want to note that the downside of Wax and Wayne is I actually I put 3 of them in my Ebonheart list, and after we cut 3 of them, we won 10 games in a row. So cutting them, we actually swapped them out for Induro Masterminds for a very specific reason. We felt that our Ebonheart Slay deck had more than enough early game options to control the board and survive, and we had other drainers such as Night Shadow, and we went heavier on the Barrow Stalker. No, we didn't go heavier. We still had only 2 Barrow Stalkers in the Ebonheart list, but we liked the opponents breaking runes and giving us cards. And when it comes to Induro Mastermind, we wanted to be sure we were drawing cards, because one of the problems with Ebonheart Slay is you need to use a lethal creature, and then you need to use like Archer's Gambit, right? So finding those pieces is really important. If you don't find those pieces, you can't defend yourself adequately. So I prioritized card draw, and I didn't mind them to break the runes. And we have other sources of drain. So sort of cutting the Moonphase for more consistent draw was important, because sometimes playing Moonphase in an Ebonheart deck when you want to draw as drain is really bad. It just feels bad. Illicit Butcher. 4-drop, 4/3, consume a creature to shackle an enemy creature. Kind of fits into the Tempo Assassin decks. Maybe even Tempo Archer. Decks that have Leaf Lurkers, Murkwater Scourges. The kind of dirty aggro decks. I call them dirty aggro decks. They just don't believe in open and honest combat. They're just racing to the face. Like, Illicit Butcher fits in the kind of deck where they're just trying to go for the throat, the jugular, and they're ignoring your creatures. They're shadow shifting away from your guards. They're using sort of underhand combat tactics. Fits in very lore-wise when you realize it's an Illicit Butcher. Don't want to know what she's butchering, but it's probably not your food, not normal food. So, consume a creature to shackle an enemy creature. We should look at this from 2 sides. First of all, consuming a creature has the potential of boosting the Butcher. So if you were to eat the Imbued Bosmer, it would become a 5/4 with lethal. But that is a little bit problem with imbued boss mode. It's like, okay, you consumed a card to get lethal, but your attack's already 5. You're already gonna kill most things, realistically speaking. Now, the tempo from the Shackle can be game-winning when you do it on a drain creature or a card that needed to trade. So we've lost and dropped games to Illicit Butcher, especially when they're running things like Mournhold Trader, Shadow Shift, Cliff Racers, Illicit Butchers. Illicit Butchers can be the card that just pushes it over the top. Just gets that. It really can set you back in the tempo. Now, how about the Magicka? What are you paying for? I think there's another card that is like a 3-drop Shackle in green, I believe. I would need to check. I believe there is a Shackle card, and I think it's contingent is here. Ash Oppressor. If you have a creature with 5 or more power, shackle an enemy creature. So the ultimate competition for this card is Ash Oppressor. But Ash Oppressor has the problem. So they're both conditional. You see, Ash Oppressor is just conditional that you need a 5-power creature. So it's kind of the Dagoth theme. Versus Illicit Butcher's Consume package, it has the Consume side. Now, Consume has the upside of potentially, like, let's say you consumed an Ill-Fated Scholar, right? Ill-Fated Scholar reads, when you consume a creature, generate a 3/2. So Illicit Butcher should probably be played with the Illicit Butcher kind of card. But it makes it a little tough right now because the Consume package is a little bit light on both the Eaters and the Eatons. So if they actually had more, like if there were twice as many cards that said Consume me, get something good, this card starts to become better and better and better and better. Now we should be careful because it does seem like the development teams in charge of TESL have not been so good at supporting new keywords. So like Treasure Hunt has not seen new Treasure Hunt cards. If Consume, and that's the thing about Veteran, right? I liked Veteran from last Alliance War. Veteran's also similar, where if Veteran does not get more love and more Veteran cards, then Veteran cards won't be as good. Remember, there's a card that says all Veterans have charge. Well, there aren't that many Veterans in the game, so if there were more Veterans in the game, that card's power level just spikes. Illicit Butcher is similar, where you're paying more for the upside of potentially consuming and having a combo off. If you're just consuming a random creature for a Shackle, right now some people are doing that and that's good enough, right? But this card would really shine when it's paired with something like the Ill-Fated Scholar, because if you just consumed a card, shackled a guy, and literally generate a 3/2, the tempo from that is massive. So it'd be interesting to see, I think Discerning Thief, Illicit Butcher, and Ill-Fated Scholar, there's something that could be done there. You're not going to see too many people running that combo again, because, not necessarily because it's bad, but because Ill-Fated Scholar is one of those questionable crafts, and only people who are ballin' in Soul Gems are going to get 3 of those. Mausoleum Delver. One of my viewers insists this card's amazing. I still don't see it. I still haven't played it. There is a world where, okay, Mausoleum Delver, let's read it. 4-drop Mausoleum Delver, 2/5 charge, pilfer, steal a card from your opponent's discard pile to yours. You could steal an enemy's Flame Atronach and then empower your Altheic Conjurer and steal away their Storm Atronach. I mean, that could be a thing. It could be a thing. 2/5, 3/4, 4 charge. This card's not bad. It's playable. Like, 4-drop is playable. Now, is it better than a Murkwater Scourge, which is my favorite 4-drop right now in green? 4-drop, 3/1, generate a curse. When you last grasp, generate another curse. That card's crazy. It sets up Leaf Lurkers. Leaf Lurkers can kill Storm Matronox, go straight through the wards. Does this really fit in the curve, and does it pack? It's like... I still think this is a cute card. Like, it's cute, but is it... And sure, maybe this card can pull off some kind of combo, but those combos really... I think those combos need more pieces. So when I say need more pieces, so there are cards that synergize with this, right? So like all Pilfer creatures, Master of Thieves, Pilfer creatures can attack twice. Now that would considerably make this card stronger. Thieves Guild Den, Pilfer creatures get +1/+1, but that card's notoriously slow. And if I'm not mistaken, is that a card at 3-drop? Let's see. Den. Thieves Den, it's a 4-drop. Which is... Okay, if this was like a 2-drop, it would be great. Okay, it'd be amazing. But if it's 4-drop, let's say you have that and Mausoleum Delver in your hand, which one do you play? Right? Which one do you play if you had both of them in your hand? In a monk deck, like, so the thing is, if you're not actually making use of the Pilfer, steal a card from your opponent's discard pile, I think you're overpaying for a card. Like, if you're just paying for 4 cost, 2, 5 charge, 1 more cost, and you'd have been at a Cliff Racer. I mean, Monk Strike, yeah, Monk Strike +3/+0 is effectively more damage and has more combo potential, and people are cutting back on Monk Strike, right? Not too many people run 3 Monk Strike, so why is that? A 4-drop section might be stacked, right? So I think that she is not good enough unless she combos off into something nice, something crazy, something that I've not seen yet before. So we wouldn't want to see that. My only immediate use case is steal away their Atronach thing, but that's still iffy, because like that's conditional on you actually getting this card in your hand fast enough. And if you actually had 3 copies of this card to make sure you can do that, what happens if you're not even against Alfiq deck? And like what happens, like is this card aggressive enough against those control decks that once you, like Monk, the archetype most likely to take advantage of Pilfer's Monk to begin with, if you don't close out a game within a certain window, this card suddenly becomes not enough. Unless you have some kind of OTK, because now they're stabilized. We've got Night Shadow on the board. We've got lethal creatures with crossbows and Ciceros and all this kind of stuff. Rage, you know. Rebellion General. Rebellion General. This card's amazing. This card's crazy. I mean, it's crazy because we just talked about Monk. I find that Mausoleum Delver, since it's naturally given to Monk, probably will not see very much play ever, because the Monk decks that involve Rebellion General definitely don't need Mausoleum Delver. Because like, if these 2 cards are competing as the 4-drop and you have a turn 4 play, do you play this or do you play this? Well, this is a combo piece, and all the combo cards that are with it are amazing. Like, if you just look at the Moonphase Suthe, for example. So let's say you got this as a 3/3 and it's Drain creature and it's on the board, right? Next turn you use Rebellion General. Let's say turn 4 is a Wane, so trigger the Wane. So then this becomes it draws you a card, basically. Now let's say you had 3 of those, 3 Moonphase Suthes, and then you played Rebellion General on a Wane turn, you draw 3 cards. You draw 3 cards. That's not crazy. And then if you had the Moongate, which activates both Wax and Wane, what happens is Rebellion General comes down and both Wax and Wane will trigger. So Wax says +1/0, trigger the Wax of all non-Rebellion General friendly creatures. And Wane is trigger the Wane for each non-Rebellion General friendly creature. So basically, if you have a Rebellion General, you can't play a Rebellion General and activate his Waxes and Wanes. That'd be an infinity loop kind of thing. So you can't do that. But it will trigger for all these guys with Wax and Wane, which is very good when you're triggering the drain, the +1/+1, the card draw over and over again. All of a sudden, you're getting like these cards are playable. This card is playable as is. When you start generating more value out of the Rebellion General's already got a reasonable body. Play it, if you played it with the Moongate, for example, he becomes a 5/5 because he gets +1 for the Wax and +0/1 for the Wane. He's a 5/5, which makes him comparable to Bleak Coast Troll, makes him comparable to a Black Dragon. And for every Wax and Wane card on the board, you start generating, it's like an Ulfric's Uprising. And Ulfric's Uprising is a 7-cost card. And people use Ulfric's Uprising just to get card draw sometimes. So, quite a good reason, actually, to play Wax and Wane cards. If Rebellion General as a card did not exist, Wax and Wane would be less powerful. Hi Zebioni, probably not in a while, considering how our Ebonheart Slay deck is wrecking people. Our Ebonheart Slay deck just won 10 games in a row. Our Empire deck is fun, but it does not win 10 games in a row. That's the answer. Put Mighty Boys early in the graveyard to resurrect them cheap. It's a counter card against decks. What card are you talking about, Uther? You're talking about this card. Talking about this card. But then why don't you just play Mr. Banish everything in their grave? Memory Wraith. It's even more devastating against those decks. And I mean, seriously speaking, stealing one card's not like I'm playing I love recursion decks that deal with grave. And if you're telling me Mausoleum Delver is going to stop me from recurring things, no, it's not, because it's only stealing one card, maybe 2 cards max. Okay, you steal 2 cards, you're not making any use of them. My deck has way more than 2 cards that were. I mean, we were able to beat Memory Wraith decks that completely annihilate our grave, mind you. So if Mausoleum Delver only deals with 2, it's not going to be a problem. I think it's interesting. Maybe this card is meant for some consume metagame where both players are playing consume cards and you're stealing their consume cards so they can't consume their ill-fated scholar so you can consume their ill-fated scholar. Yeah, it's a stretch, but maybe that's the design behind it. You know what? We have one support. We have support for 1 in Moons of Elsweyr, so we supposed to have support. I know, isn't it kind of like, I'm not sure about these Moon Gates and all these supports being 1 cost. Because they're very difficult to remove, and they're like not efficient to remove at all. Like there's only, and support removal and supports in general, the way they play out in Elder Scrolls Legends, it feels a little wonky, because when you're talking about classes that can remove supports, there are literally colors that can't remove supports. Like blue and green cannot remove supports. I don't even know, can willpower remove supports without red and purple? Because like Edict of Azura removes supports. But I'm pretty sure yellow, I know for sure blue and green cannot remove supports outside of Dismantle. And that's crazy, because Dismantle, destroy a neutral creature or destroy support, it's like way more than 1 cost. If you ran that to counter Moongate, it's like, what? So there is something weird about like the supports in the game. They should be, like the way supports can blow people out, and they can be completely wrecked. Like apparently like red with the Dushniks and the Belligerents, they just like, and the Shadow Fens, they just make your supports look so poo-poo. So I would like to see something done about that. So Rebellion General with Queen's Captain, which we'd probably get to in another day. Yeah, definitely not today. Sorry. Rebellion General with Queen's Captain. These are the 2 most powerful Wax and Wane cards in the game. And interestingly enough, they're playable on the same turn because they're 12 Magicka. So if you used Moongate with Rebellion General and a Queen's Captain, like, so you play the Queen's Captain first. You use the Moongate, activate it. So you played it a previous turn because it's 1 Magicka. You play Queen's Captain. She draws you 2 cards for 8, kills a creature. Cool. Then you play Rebellion General. It triggers Queen's Captain's abilities again. You draw another 2 cards and you destroy another creature. And on top of that, it triggers the wax and wanes of everybody else. So if you had a Queen's Captain, before that, if you had a Moonfae Suthe, and he was 2/2 draw card, now he becomes 3/3 drain draw card. You just drew 5 cards. You draw 4 cards from Queen's Captain, 1 card from Moonfae Suthe. So Rebellion, and the chances once you trigger that, okay, you know what's going to happen is if you're playing Monk, you're a 50 card deck. You're probably going to draw another Rebellion General. If not in those 5 cards, you probably just drew one in like the next draw or something. Or another's Queen's Captain. Because if you ran the Queen's Captain package, maybe you go 3 on the Queen's Captain, and I think that's reasonable. Queen's Captain's so strong, and it's actually cheap enough that you could play 3 of, and you could make, you could just sort of, if you wanted to run 3 Queen's Captain in Monk deck, you just need to go a little bit lighter in some other areas, and that's probably why you won't see things like Devious Bandit in those same decks, is because in order to pull off a deck that has 3 8 drops, you want to make sure that you have good plays leading up to that, right? So that's Rebellion General plus the Queen's Captain, best Wax and Wane combo in the game. Is it broken? It's borderline broken, which is nice, because I mean, if Alfiq was the only thing borderline, Alfiq's broken, but if Rebellion General's getting there, then you're gonna see a little bit more variety in decks. I think some people in the top 10 last season were playing Monk. I think so, because Monk is quite scary when played as a control deck using the Wax and Wane sort of triggers to their full potential. If you want to check out what that looks like, I'm pretty sure right now Aini is streaming and he's playing his version of the deck, and he's got a very creative version of what that looks like. So let's talk about Aini's version, because it is a good example. Rebellion General is a great Wax and Wane card, but that doesn't mean your deck needs to have every Wax and Wane card in the deck game to make it work. You just need Rebellion General and Queen's Captains and the Drain creature and maybe some of the Willpower Khajiits. So you only need like 4 or 5 different Wax and Wane cards, and that's already good enough. Everything else could actually be a different kind of thing. Like you could put Bruma Profiteers, you could put Hive Defenders, you could put Javelins, you could put the other good cards in those sets. He's running Conjuring Spirit and Bruma Profiteer, forward camps, heals. So he's doing a lot of creative things with his deck. Well, why? With his using the Moongate forward camps and potions of elixirs of vitality, he's generating a lot more card draw. He's generating East March Crusaders. He's actually using Conjurer Spirit. Every time you heal, generate a 2/2 wolf. So he's actually creating these other threat vectors, and he's using the Rebellion General Wax Wane package as the finish him move. Right? So you don't need... So he wants to put himself in a comfortable position where he doesn't have to play Rebellion General until it really hurts. So he use other threats to kind of stabilize the board, cause problems for your opponent. Rebellion General, Queen's Captain, shut the game out. And I think it's actually strong enough to contest other very respectable control decks like Ebonheart Slay, etc. Other decks, like they can really hurt you. Guildsworn Rage, he definitely can beat Guildsworn Rage with that kind of package. I mean, they destroy a creature is also an answer to the Alfiq's Storm Atronach, right? And destroy a creature twice. How many times can those Battle Mage players really create a board? I have a feeling Wax and Wane will not be nerfed. Which is fine, because it's a new keyword. I mean, it's not like easy and crazy over the top. It's not without its risks to play, and it's not unbeatable. But I'm just saying when it happens, it definitely looks, the game can look completely unwinnable once they have enough wax and wane creatures on the board. Like, they have 2 Queen's Captains, okay? They play 1 Rebellion General. Dude, what's gonna happen when they play the 2nd Rebellion General? Like, 2nd Rebellion General destroys 2 creatures, blah, 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 blah. So, actually, teching against them might include things like Red Year, because their deck is very focused on building a board, and if you annihilate that board, their value generators are gone. So, like, Rebellion General is not so great when it doesn't have anything to uprising, basically. So we are almost there. We're on the Apex Predator. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Apex Predator. This card's interesting. It's very interesting. And his brother is the Monastic Champion. I mean, I was playing Monk, and I have lots of love for Monastic Champion. So, Monastic Champion's amazing. And the thing is, who's actually better? Is Apex better or Monastic Champion? My feeling is Monastic Champion's better. But the things Apex Predator can do, potentially, it gives Monastic Champion a run for his money. They're definitely brothers in the sense that they're both run in Monk decks. Like, Apex Predator is supposed to be for Monk, for sure, right? Because he's movement based. So let's read him out. Apex Predator, 5-drop, 5/5. When Apex Predator moves, deal 2 damage to your opponent, and you gain 2 health. At the end of turn, if there are no enemy creatures in this lane, move Apex Predator. So what you want to do is you want to play it on an empty lane. First of all, you play it on an empty lane. At the end of your turn, it will move to the other lane. So if Shadow Lane's empty, you put it in Shadow Lane, and then it will move to Field Lane, deal 2 damage to the opponent, gain you 2 life, and still have cover. If you put it in Field Lane, it's empty. Then it will move, do the same thing, deal 2 damage, gain 2 life, go into the Shadow Lane, and then gain cover. Apex Predator shines in decks that move him and strike twice. So if you play those cards that move him, the 3-drop that says move a creature, every time a creature moves, give it +1/+1. He will get to become 6/6, and that movement will deal 2 damage and gain you 2 life. Generally speaking, you care more about the damage part than the health part, because Apex Predator is about killing people. So if you move him, let's just theory craft for a second. If you moved him 5 times, he does 10 damage to their face from his ability. Now if you moved him 5 times with the guy that gives you +1/+1 on the board, he will become a 10/10 and have done 10 damage to the face. Now you're like, how the heck do you move him 5 times in 1 turn? No one said you had to move him 5 times in 1 turn. You could move him 5 times in 2 turns. So you play Apex Predator, 5 Magicka. He moves himself the first turn because you play him on empty lane, so he already moved once. So if you already had developed the 3-drop +1/+1, he's going to get buffed. Now if you haven't played that guy, Monk can move him again using things that even move him twice. Move in Shadows is a card, 0-cost card that moves him once and then moves him back. It moves him twice. That's 4 damage burn. That's a 0-cost lightning bolt, basically, because his movement ability generates 4 damage, right? He's definitely a balls to the walls kind of guy. It's because, when I say balls to the walls, it's very much the whole monk aggro philosophy, which is different than the monk control philosophy, is this guy doesn't care about runes. Like, this guy and almost all those other monk cards, they struggle against Guildsworn specifically, because Guildsworn, my Guildsworn deck, has 15 prophecies in a 75 card list. 15 divided by 75 is 20%. There's a 1 in 5 chance that you're going to hit a prophecy. Because they deal so much damage in one strike with these kind of cards, with things like Monk Strike, Swift Strike, they're breaking like 3 runes in a row. And if you put too many eggs on your Apex Predator, you buffed him like crazy, like you're going for the Swift Strike plan, he hits them for 10 damage, and you crack a Harpy or you crack a Javelin, well, you just lost the game, or you didn't necessarily lose the game, but your Swift Strike is a little bit not going to be used on that turn. So I think Monk needs to recognize, my experience with Monk is its aggressive matchup versus Guildsworn is specifically bad because Guildsworn has ridiculously high counts of prophecies, which are really good prophecies that are all playable from hand. That being said, Apex, those Monk decks using Apex Predator, they really shine against Battle Mage and decks that, like Battle Mage only has 6 prophecies, 3 bolts and 3 Harpies, okay? So it's not as bad, and it's just slightly more than 10%, which is way better than 20%. I mean, like when the opponent has a 10% chance to pull prophecy, Monk's gonna shine a little bit better than if they have a 20% chance. Plus, none of the prophecies in Battle Mage actually gain them health, so Apex Predator is gonna shine in that kind of matchup much more. You're hoping to pair this card with things like Swift Strike, Monk Strike, Shadow Shift. So like, let's say it's turn 6, what's the ideal? If you Shadow Shift him, so he does 2 on his first turn. If you Shadow Shift him, he does 4. Then Monk Strike, he does 6. So he's done 6 for movement because he moved on the turn you played him. He Shadow Shift, moved him again, so he does 4. You do 6 from the Monk Strike, moving him again, 6. His attack is now 8. So you can deal 14 damage with a Monk Strike and a Shadow Shift with him. So you don't want him to be the only card that dealt damage when you play Apex Predator, because generally that's a nice situation. He may not draw the Swift Strike, but he's great when your other Monk cards got you halfway there. Like when your other Pilferers, your Mournhold Traders, maybe if you run them. I don't like running Mournhold Trader in Monk aggro simply because these movement-based decks hate guards, and a 4/4 that generates a guard is a problem. I'd rather run the Jackal, which is a 4/2 that does not have that downside. That being said, when we talk about Apex Predator and we talk about the twin brother on the willpower side, I personally, if I had both of them in my hands turn 5 or I have 5 Magicka somehow, I would play Monastic Champion every single time almost, because Monastic Champion is scary, dude. This is a guy, first he has more attack, second he has breakthrough, so if they put a guard, he's getting in, versus the other guy, if you don't have movement and they put a guard, it's kind of like, oh man, we just missed a lot of damage. And then the generating of 3/3 is crazy. So when you have Monastic Champion on the board and he's not answered, and you have movement in your deck, and you have things like Master of Thieves, this thing does 12 damage with Master of Thieves. So you put Master of Thieves down, he attacks once, 6 damage, attacks twice, 6 damage. He just generated 2 3/3s. So Master of Thieves, Monastic Champion has my heart over, say, Apex Predator. So I would actually only try to run maybe 1 Apex Predator, not try to run 3. 3 is kind of excessive. I don't know if there's enough movement in the game to actually support 3 Apex Predators, but I've been OTK'd by him, and I'm pretty sure the opponents ran 3 Apex Predators just to make sure that they can get to that point. I think Moongate should cost more Magicka, to be really honest with you. I don't think it should cost 1 Magicka, because that's actually the real problem. It's actually impossible to play around. And it's like impossible to like sure, like the number of times you douchenick the Moongate, then they probably have another one. And then the thing is, yeah, I think it's not Wax and Wayne cards that need to get nerfed. The thing is, the Moongate needs to cost more Magicka so that you could actually react to it. And I think that other classes like Assassin, Green and Blue specifically, need more help when it comes to removing supports. It's kind of dumb if they can't remove supports, and it just gives other colors an unfair advantage. And that's my main problem with Alfiq, is Alfiq is giving blue decks an unfair advantage to me. So like Ebonheart Slay would be much, much better if Alfiq was nerfed, right? Because they can't run Alfiq, so they're not benefiting from it. Whereas Guildsworn, Battlemage, and Dagoth see a lot of popularity, largely because they're blue and they can run Alfiq. And I think one of the advantages Elder Scrolls Legends has in balancing itself over Shadowverse and Gwent is that players have choice with which color combinations they want. So the balanced team at Sparky Pants, all they need to really focus on is, are the colors balanced? Are the individual colors balanced? Because people can then choose between those different colors, right? So like if there's a strong card in red, well, everyone can start running red if they wanted to, right? Versus in Shadowverse, they have different classes. So if they had a card that's really strong in one class, the other classes cannot use it. Versus in this case, if they made a strong blue card, everybody can just put it in there. You could put a blue Assassin deck, you could put a blue Battle Mage deck, you do Guildsworn, you know? So there's a little bit more flexibility there. But there is a problem when certain colors just can't do what other colors can't. Like, and it's not like thematic. Like, removing supports shouldn't be is there anything lore-based that only the strong and the endurance can remove supports? Those that endure, right? So that makes Moongates kind of invulnerable to, like, reaction. It's just very hard to react to it, and if you Edict of Azura a 1-drop, you're already on track to lose. So Cartel Bruiser, 5-drop, 4/4 Pilfer, +2/+2. He's got cool armor. But he is competing against literally the cards we were talking about. Apex Predator, Monastic Champion. And we're already, when you look at a monk deck, you only have 50 cards. So you're already like very limited in slots. So putting a Cartel Bruiser here over a Monastic Champion seems a little crazy. First of all, Cartel Bruiser's stat line is he's immediately lightning boltable, which is something that Apex Predator and Monastic Champion definitely benefit from not being so vulnerable. That's important because almost every single blue deck runs 3 lightning bolts. Like, almost. It's a big deal. Like, by being a 5 toughness creature, you're more resilient to that easy 1 channeled storm, for example. Like that 1 pilfer, the 1 empower trigger into a channeled storm. So I think 5 toughness is definitely a relevant thing that is worth paying the Magicka for. Now the Pilfer 2/2 without breakthrough means guards immediately stop you in your track. You play Cartel Bruiser and you're feeling, I'm going to have a great turn. Then they put a Phalanx Exemplar in front of you. That's a 5/6 guard. Now you're forced to use movement on Cartel Bruiser. But if you're using movement on this chap, that means that's movement that you're not going to be using on Apex Predator. So the world where Cartel Bruiser shines the most is probably the decks that run Master of Thieves and say Pilfer creatures can attack twice. At that stage, he could be scary, right? You can make him a 4/4, 6/6. He can do 10 damage if he can do 10 damage if not answered in Master of Thieves can resolve the next turn. But your friend the Monastic Champion can do 12 damage and generate 2/3/3s. So there's literally no world where this is better unless you're running a deck that doesn't have willpower. At which point, I'm not sure why you would do that, because the other good Pilfer cards, I think Pilfer only exists in green and yellow. If I'm pretty sure. Whoa, I lied. Oh, that's because of the new set. The new set changed that for sure. The new set, look, Pilfer, first card in Pilfer is in, there's only one Pilfer card in Endurance. How many Pilfer cards in green? 3 pages. In yellow, 1, 2 pages. Blue, 1 card. So that means Pilfer has just become broadened to all the other classes, other attributes in Moons of Elsweyr, and they're all Khajiits, all Khajiit. Discerning Thief's excellent card, by the way. But if you're looking for your Pilfer package, you can't really make a Pilfer deck unless you're using green and yellow. I mean, you're going to do a green purple and make use of a single Pilfer card? Kind of suspicious. Especially because you don't really want to use Scout's Report to throw in Hiss Mages in a Pilfer deck. So yeah, this guy doesn't do it. Sorry, Cartel Bruiser. Corinth Brawler. Khajiit 4/4. It's also worth noting, okay, this guy pilfering gets +2/+2. The other guy is a 6/5, so he already does the 2 damage. He has the 5 toughness. He survives the lightning bolt. So he already does the same damage. He has a 6 attack straight played. So Cartel Bruiser needs to attack to become as strong as the our monastic champion. Second of all, +2/+2 is worse than getting a 3/3. So like he already is better than Cartel Bruiser straight out of the gates. When they both pilfer, the 3/3 is more important than 2/2 for a couple reasons. Because if this guy is getting the buffs, this kind of comes back to like why do you want to split your stats between different bodies? Is he becomes more and more vulnerable to things like javelins, right? Versus if you start generating these 3/3 tokens, you're now forcing them in a position where this is about turn 6. Like if you play this turn 5, it's turn 6. They're about turn 6, turn 7. They can't Dawn's Wrath yet, so they're gonna have to use Ice Storm. But if they use Ice Storm, that doesn't answer the 6/5 that's hitting them in the face, generating more 3/3s. Okay, if they answer the 6/5s with the javelin, the 3/3s are not answered, right? So you're putting them in a situation where you can only answer one threat. You're either answering the 3/3s or you're answering the 6/5. The Cartel Bruiser is answered by a single card, and you only need to answer it once. It's like a single Territorial Viper, bye-bye, gone. And 3/3 worth of stats is ultimately better than a 2/2, right? So if you got +2/+2, wouldn't you rather have a 3/3 body token, right? And under the best use case where you have Master of Thieves in both situations, this card goes in for 4, then goes in for 6. Okay, cool. Goes in for 10. The other guy goes in for 12 and generated 2 3/3s. Okay, Corinth Brawler. I just thought it was a good example to, because what I'm encouraging is people learn how to and get better at. I'm trying to get better at how to compare cards and evaluate cards, because sometimes cards might look bad, but they have actually different use cases. In this case, Cartel Bruiser is just straight worse, so therefore shouldn't be played, because there's a card that's far better. But in general, thinking about how to compare the different cards, I think that's a valuable skill that is important. It's like reading and trying to figure out, okay, why is this one better, why is this one worse? And then use that skill to transfer it when looking at other cards, because when you're able to compare 5-drop to 5-drop, now you have in the memory bank, a 5-drop ought to be as good as a monastic champion. Otherwise, it's not that good, if they're used for the same thing. Corinth Brawler. Khajiit 4/4 wax +1/+1, and your opponent can't target Corinth Brawler with actions. Wayne, gain 1 magicka this turn for this enemy creature in this lane. It just occurred to me that this card, when paired with Rebellion General, is like a mini Nixox. So, best case scenario is a Wayne situation. You play this card, and it costs 1 magicka because you played it into a lane that has 4 creatures. So if you played it into a creature, so basically on a Wayne turn, even turns, if you played it on a lane that's full of enemy creatures, you would gain back 4 magicka, so the Corinth Brawler would only cost 1 magicka. Not bad. 1 magicka for a 4/4. Now, in a Wayne turn, you're doing 5 drop, 5/5, can't be targeted with actions. Again, if you're doing the wax, I don't think this card is better. Okay, you have to think about it in situational. In most situations, Corinth Brawler, played without the recycling of magicka, is worse than the Apex Predator and worse than the other Monastic Champion. But when you can get the Wax and Wayne to trigger via our boy Rebellion General or via Moongate, you're starting to find situations where Corinth Brawler is better, because if you can play this for 1 magicka and become a 5/5 that can't be targeted by actions, now you're talking. I wonder if there's some weird combo with Corinth Brawler, Chamath, Battle of Chamath Keep, and Rebellion General. And Doppelgangers. That's a really weird sounding deck, but it's a really weird way to get Nixox. It's probably not efficient at all, but it just seems interesting how you can gain magicka from this, and then if you trigger the Wax and Wayne, like let's say you played it for 1 magicka on the Wayne, and then you use Rebellion General. What happens to your magicka? You see? Like, if you played Corinth Brawler for 1 magicka on that lane, they have 4 things, and let's just say you're at 5 magicka, so you go to 5. You go to 1, sorry, you go to 4. Then you use Rebellion General. You basically get your 4 magicka back again, so you get Rebellion General again. So you played a free Rebellion General, basically, in that situation. Wait, why don't people play this card? Why don't people actually play this card? Like, maybe because there's nothing that 6 costs that people want to follow up with this card, but this card actually seems kind of interesting. Interesting. Thanks for bringing this to my attention. I didn't really know much about this card. Torvald Crook we're a little bit aware of. The thing is, Torvald Crook's problem is that all the decks that put Torvald Crook in the deck don't actually seem to have any good reason to actually have more magicka. That's actually what I've noticed. Is like, they play Torvald Crook, they play their whole hand out the next turn, and then they're like no hit cards in their hand, and they don't have enough damage. And the game's over. That's the problem that Torvald Crook... I've firsthand witnessed people just flat out gassing out. I do like the concept of Corinth Brawler. I think she's... because she has the ability to play for 1 magicka, she's decent. But you have to be careful playing too many of these cards. Again, like... I'm already advocating that a monk deck's so stacked that even a one of Apex Predator is questionable. Like, it's even possible to run a monk deck with 0 Apex Predators and 3 Monastic Champions as your 5-drop suite. And this kind of ties back to the monk's strategy should be trying to end the game at around turn 7, 8. Turn 7, you're hoping to have set up the board for a Monk Swift Strike. Monk Strike, Swift Strike, basically. You want to have something there to do that combo. And Corinth Brawler doesn't exactly seem to be playing into that. Like, she doesn't synergize with movement and all that kind of stuff. But she's certainly a tech card versus I feel like she's a tech card versus go wide strategies. It's kind of weird, though. Like, tech card versus go wide strategies means that calling could be a 1 of, and in that case it's just a huge temple gain, or just like trying to recontrol the board. and put multiple threats down. But it's not a clear path to victory when you play this kind of card. Devious Bandit. Deal 3 damage to your opponent and you gain 3 health. Devious Bandit has the pilfer abilities of all your creatures. That is crazy. Like, people don't play this card. I've definitely seen this card get huge, like humongous, before. Okay, so let's unpack 3. So, deal 3 damage and gain 3 life is actually worth 3 magicka, basically. It's almost worth 3 magicka, considering how the 3/2 House Kinsman does that ability, and it has his last grasp, and it's 3 magicka. So, and let's just say 3 magicka pays for the summon. Now, the gain the pilfer abilities of all your creatures has some interesting repercussions. Especially if monastic champion's on the board, that means you're going to generate the 5/5. You're going to generate a 3/3. I feel like this card does have a place in the monk deck. And the deck that deck needs to curve out at 6. Like that card deck does not play cards more expensive than 6 drops. You might have to take out things like Cliff Racers for this card. And that's fine. Like, okay, if you're gonna run a Devious Bandit, you're basically all in on the idea that you are going to OTK them. Like, I think Devious Bandit shines if you're going to kill them on 1 turn, basically. You're not you like chip him down a little bit and then bring him maybe to 20 health. Then you're hopefully using Devious Bandit-like creature to sort of close out the game. But her very small body makes her easily answered. She's vulnerable to Channeled Storm. That's a 3-drop. She's vulnerable to Ice Storm, okay. She's vulnerable to Lethal, of course. Slay procs. She's very vulnerable. So yeah, I think that's the problem with her. She's kind of like a card that can do a lot and has the OTK potential, but she's not resilient. Lightning Bolt takes her out, so she's high risk and high reward. Very high risk, because you need to develop a board full of creatures that have pilfer abilities. Like, she will be most happy to have seen multiple pilfer creatures on the board, and then she triggers her pilfer. Think about the guy, the Blood Pact Messenger is on the board. Pilfer, draw 2 cards. Devious Bandit coming down, hitting for 3, and immediately drawing 2 cards, potentially getting buffed by other pilfer abilities, pilfer generating possible 3/3s. It's romantic, but it's a little bit idealistic. Realistically speaking, most of the time monks cards don't stay on the board that long. So, I've experienced having basically like 1 or 2 threats on the board, and maybe only one of them has pilfer. So Devious Bandit might have very limited value when you only have 1 pilfer creature. And absolutely, this is garbage if you had no pilfer creatures and you just played it straight out, and you hit him for 3, and then you gain 3, and then you need to wait to play more pilfer creatures the next turn and just hope to pilfer. Because what happens when they put that fat guard? You're talking turn 7. They could put a Mighty Conjuring in your face. And that's something that we need to be careful about Devious Bandit, is like, sure, she has crazy upsides when she goes well, but how tolerable is the downside, right? Because Mighty Conjuring is a card that has upside too. You have a 5 power creature creator, sure, get the big Lava Interlock. But the downside is, what if your opponent plays Witherhand Cultists? What if your opponent kills your 5 toughness creatures, or you don't have any 5 toughness creatures on the board? Then Mighty Conjuring can low roll you a 4-drop. The 5/3 Flame Atronach is actually a 4-drop. So if you played Mighty Conjuring with no 5 toughness creature and you low rolled and you got the 4-drop 5/3 breakthrough, you just paid 3 magicka more. It's even worse if you played it for the Witherhand Cultist price, 9 magicka, right? So knowing sort of the floor and the ceiling of a card is a good way to look at cards, because cards can give you a range of value, and your objective when you're playing cards is to squeeze the most value you can out of every card. So Devious Bandit, for example, if you're going to play it, you're trying to squeeze the maximum value. Now, it's a little suspicious that squeezing the maximum value in practice does not match on paper. On paper, you have, for example, 7 other pilfer creatures on the board, and you play Devious Bandit, right? That's the on paper perfect case scenario. But how often can you even put 2 pilfer creatures on the board before Devious Bandit comes down? Definitely, this is a card that I think if a person had 3 of these cards, because I have 0, they could really do the community a favor by actually playing around with this card, seeing what potential it has, and testing it for those of us who have 0 copies of the card, and then uploading videos, and then we ourselves can see, oh, that's what Devious Bandit. Wow, that's cool, because it's very hard for even a player like me who's invested real money in the game to actually get myself to press the soul summon button if I see it on paper and I'm just looking at such a high ceiling, such a low floor. Right? The low floor is the Devious Bandit comes down flat, nobody's on the ground, and she just gets immediately sniped by the guard's in front of her face, and she gets killed by Channeled Storm. It's like, what did we develop? Our game plan went absolutely nowhere. If anything, we might have even developed their game plan, because our 3 damage to the face might have broken a rune and gave them an additional card resource when we were not ready to finish them. Worst case scenarios versus best case scenarios. Ooh, I'm excited. We're at the end, and then I'm going to eat lunch. Whispering Claw Strike. Prophecy. You know, sometimes I'm getting a little suspicious that Khajiit are Chinese people. Because are there Asians in Elder Scrolls Legends? Are there? I have no idea. Because I do know Elder Scrolls Legends is a pretty old IP, and they definitely, I mean, it's kind of like Lord of the Rings. In Lord of the Rings, all the good guys are white. All the orcs are black. And all the Easterling people and the Middle Eastern people, you guys are Harad, and you guys ride Mamluks. Everybody who's a Asian person, you ride chariots, and you're Easterlings. You're from Khand. So the Lord of the Rings is an old book, right? So Lord of the Rings is kind of the grandfather of a lot of these fantasy genre stuff. And there is slightly veiled racism in some of these things. For example, if all the good guys are white and all the Asian people are actually Khajiits, makes us a little suspicious. But I don't play ESO, so I have no idea how they did that. Maybe they changed things up, and Imperials now can be everybody. Imperials are America, so you got Black Imperials, Asian Imperials, Red Imperials. But this picture just looks a little suspicious with the Buddha palm going down. Okay, back to the card. 6-drop Whispering Claw Strike. Prophecy. Give an enemy creature -2/-2 and a friendly creature +2/+2. This is the kind of prophecy you wish you had in your deck and just came out from the top, and that you never want to play from your hand. Like this. So like the 6-cost prophecies. You know, this just gave me an idea. Assassin Beetle. Where is Assassin Beetle from? Assassin Beetle wants this card. What set is this from? Alliance War. This card and that card might be playable together. Assassin Beetle. 5-drop. 2/2. Prophecy. Play a prophecy from your hand. So you could play this and then play that card, for example. Or you can do what someone did to me, and it was painful, but they used Assassin Beetle, and then they used the Dream Girl. What's the Prophecy Blue? 6-drop. Fate Weaver. Played Fate Weaver. Draw a card if it's Prophecy, you can play for free. Basically kind of a Prophecy Assassin list. So if we just let a real quick check and see how many prophecies are in green. Okay, that's decent. decent, decent. All right, so then there's some kind of prophecy assassin archetype coming up. So it's actually kind of like supposed to be comboed off, I think, with like Assassin Beetle. Considering Assassin Beetle was literally released the set before, and then Whispering Claw Strike. If it's a 5-drop for a 4/4 that does -2/-2 to something, that's acceptable. It's okay. It's not perfect. You're definitely overpaying stuff, but that's the whole thing about prophecies is you overpay because you have the potential of getting for free when the rune's cracked. This reminds me of one of my favorite cards in Magic the Gathering, Reflective Palm. Reflective Palm and I have good memories together. Reflective Palm is literally what it should be. It's like Reflective Palm is so much better than this card. Reflective Palm's like a 2-drop. Deflecting Palm, there you go. Deflecting Palm just makes this card look horrible. Like, Deflecting Palm reads, the next time a source of your choice would deal damage to you this turn, prevent that damage. If damage is prevented this way, Deflecting Palm deals that much damage to that source's controller. So basically, it's a 2-drop instant. Played on their turn, they do some kind of fireball combo magic. Like, I burn you for 10 damage, and then you say, nope, talk to the hand. So there is something a little lackluster about Whispering Claw Strike. So you can't really play this from hand without Assassin Beetle and stuff like that and ever feel good about it. But if this somehow came off of a rune you got for free, that's huge. But it's high risk. It's a high risk prophecy, and I would stay away from this kind of card. My policy, which has been working wonderfully for me so far, is I don't play prophecies. I do not feel good playing from hand. So if we look at my Guildsworn deck, for example, highest prophecy count, 15, right? Apprentice Guildsworn, Guildsworn Apprentice, we'll play this from hands, full, fine. Per Harpy, we'll play it from hand, fine. Lightning Bolts, we'll play those from hand. Golden Initiates, we'll play them from hand. Piercing Javelins, we'll play them from hand, right? We can play every single one of them from hand, and when they come for free, we just feel great about it. We still feel fine about playing it full cost, basically. And that's my rule when putting prophecies in my decks. And that card does not pass that test. The Whispering Claw Strike does not do it. So Razumdar. I love this card. I think this card's great. If you run Spoils of War, take it out of your deck and put this card instead. I just think this card's way better than Spoils of War in general. Because this card, let's read it. 7-drop, 4/3 charge, Razumdar. Draw a copy of the first card your opponent draws each turn. Amazing! Amazing! Why? What does he do? You charge. So what you want to do with him is you charge and you break the rune with him. You draw the card that they draw off the charge, off the rune, and after you pass your turn, you draw the card that they draw. So it says each turn. So when you play in charge, it's a turn, right? If you break a rune, you're forcing them to draw a card. If that card that they draw is not a lightning bolt, Razumdar is going to live, and then you pass your turn, and now it's their turn. Now it's your opponent. It's a new turn, so they draw a card. You get to draw the card. This is really good for a couple reasons. One, you have intel on what the two top. You know exactly what 2 cards they drew because you drew the exact same cards as them. Okay. Razumdar then is a draw card because he literally just drew you 2 cards while hitting them in the face, which is kind of cool because then you draw cards while hitting them in the face. This is good for aggressive archetype because aggressive decks need to charge and hit the face, and they also need to refuel the hand. Now, if you know exactly what cards that he just drew, you're going to be able to plan your turns a little bit better. Oh, he just drew a Dawn's Wrath. Earthbone Spinner? You can then plan accordingly. Now, if they don't actually answer this card, you're going to draw even more cards. Like, So this card could actually draw you 4 cards if he lived for some reason. He charges, draws you a card, breaks a rune, draws a card. Okay. You pass your turn. They draw a card. They answer some other threat. They didn't deal with Razum. It's your turn. You can break a rune again, pass your turn. You drew a card when the rune broke, and they drew the next card. So you just drew 4 cards that they had. Now, let's compare Razum to Spoils of War. Spoils of War is an excellent card, but I've actually cut it from every single deck, which is interesting because I love Spoils of War, but it doesn't seem to fit. Spoils of War is 5-drop, draw 2 cards. So Razum Dar has the same part. So let's say if you had a Spoils of War that you played without any empowered triggers, Razum Dar does the exact same thing. So 5 cost of the drawing 2 cards is you paid for it in the 7 cost. So 5 is for the 2. So 5 Magicka was paying for draw 2, and then 2 Magicka was paying for the 4/3 charge. Sounds like a deal. Cliff Racer's 5-drop for, and you can look at it the other way around. Cliff Racer's a 5-drop to charge, deal 4 to their face, and usually dies the turn after. Razum is, if you said 5 of the Magicka of the 7 was paid for the charge, that means only 2 Magicka was paid for the spoils. So he's basically a Spoils of War and a Cliff Racer put together. So it's like a Cliff Racer plus a Spoils of War that was empowered 3 times, which is above average. Your average Spoils of War is probably going to get 2 empowered triggers, okay? Past 2 empowered triggers, you're getting above average, and that's going to be better than Razum Dar's draw, right? But Razum Dar's is not conditional on anything. He's all in one card. It's just like one card. So as a card, he's very effective. Like, he's the kind of card you want to top deck when you don't have any cards left, right? Because he generates more cards and he deals damage. So in a way, he's like a mini Tazcat, right? Also, being a 7-cost card, I find that he's actually quite playable, even in the Alfiq meta. Now, you don't need to play him. Like, you probably don't want to play him if you have other plays with 7 Magicka. You play him when it's the opportunity's there, because he's really a card. It's just like, don't play Spoils of War if your opponent's hitting your face and giving you 5 extra free cards, okay? If he hit your face 5 free cards, why do you play a card that draws you cards? So it's acceptable for Razum Dar to be an overpriced card draw. Like, when I say overpriced, he's an overpriced Cliff Racer, okay? So if you're playing Razum Dar and you don't go face and you just trade, he's really bad. Because Cliff Racer is that 5-drop trade 4/4, right? 7 cost 4/3 trade and die is not where you want to. It's like a not. That's like the floor of Razum Dar, and hopefully you're not put in that kind of situation. But if you're actually put in that kind of situation, it probably means the game's really tight and your deck is being attacked. You're under attack, so they broke a bunch of runes, so you have tons of cards anyway. So you don't really need card draw if you're forced to trade like that. So I kind of talked about him kind of in the aggro-y sort of decks. I'm pretty sure I run him in my Dominion deck, for example. Let's open the Dominion. It's been a long time since we've played Dominion. He's not in this deck right now. It's crazy. We should put him in the deck. What should we take out? Interesting. It's interesting how Razum's not in this deck. I would totally put it back in. This deck is actually suffering from card draw problems. Temple Conjurers. Could actually take out the reflective. I actually take out. I would rather keep the temple, but I would keep it that way. Razum's good enough for the deck. The deck's been suffering from card draw problems. But in my control deck, which we played recently, our most recent addition was Razum Dar, actually. We traded Razum Dar out for a more expensive card, Night Talon Lord. And this is actually how you guys can upgrade your decks. Is if you take a card, for example, you take, like, okay, Red Year was swapped out for Odahviing. So, like, let's say I played this deck with Odahviing, and I played this deck with a Night Talon Lord. Night Talon Lord's 9 cost. Odahving's 12 cost. And the deck performed very well, even when those cards were bricked. So I figured, well, if Odahving is bricking and Night Talon Lord are bricking, but we're still doing well, if we replace those cards with similar but cheaper cards, then the performance of the deck can't possibly drop. So like Odahving's job is to clear the board, but he had the downside of being Marocked, and he's also the downside that he couldn't actually be played fast enough. And he also has the downside of not actually being able to clear the board when toughness is greater than 4, right? So red year solves that problem. It's cheaper, it's a full board clear, it's reset, deals damage, basically kills everything in the game. Almost. Night Talon Lord was swapped out for Razumdar because I just felt that he's just a high risk play. Night Talon Lord was a 9-drop, and he was only good when paired with Squish the Wimpy, and that was very conditional, and he couldn't be paired with Rage. And sometimes in the control matchup, he was a dead card because the opponents could just immediately deal with him, and you'd run out of cards. Razumdar, this deck can get a lot of Magicka, and it just needs card draw sometimes. So Razumdar was slotted in and say, hey, you're just going to be the Spoils of War. You're going to be a Spoils of War with a body. And he performed, the swaps performed really well in the game following the new tech choices. So I hope you guys enjoyed our set review. We will upload it on YouTube, and we will do Willpower on another day. I will just, right before we end, I'll just go quickly on what I think. I think this card, I'll say fast. Bad, good. Bad, good, good, bad, good, good, bad, good, good, bad, good, bad, good. That's my analysis. Corinth Brawler was the only one I kind of hesitated on because I'm thinking Corinth Brawler is like the use case of Corinth Brawler doesn't cleanly fit. But the idea of getting a 1-drop 4/4 can be game changing. So in that case, it's not something that you can put 3 of in the deck, but I mean, if 1-drop 4/4 is not bad. So we're going to host somebody, and thank you for watching. We were faster this time. Have a wonderful day.